Freddie, you can be seated now also. Thank you. Okay, so now that my voice is a little bit back, let me first just say thank you so much to the chorus and to Joyce and to Cantor Rose, and that Ma'otzor was just, wow, just so beautiful. Thank you so much, really. How's everybody doing? Good? Okay, good. Shabbat Shalom. We are at one of my favorite Shabbatot of the whole year, Shabbat Chanukah. I recently ranked the Jewish holidays in terms of my personal favorites, and Chanukah came in at number 2, only behind everybody's favorite, of course, Shmini Atzeret, which you all know I love so much, but Chanukah came in at number 2. So I know this might come as a shock, because what about Pesach or Rosh Hashanah or, insert your favorite holiday here, but I am a Chanukah lover and defender. And so I want to take this opportunity, this drashah, to give a little bit of the reason why. So I think there's 2 major reasons. The first is the coziness factor. I love everyone gathering around and lighting the candles and then admiring the candles amidst the dark, particularly here in the snowy and bitter cold weather. It feels like such a small, easy way to add joy in a time that desperately needs more joy. And the second reason is the subject of miracles. And answering the question, my Chanukah, what is the miracle of Chanukah? This is the subject of much debate in Jewish literature. Is the miracle of Chanukah the miracle of a tiny bit of oil that the Maccabees found in the destroyed temple that was only meant to last 1 night, but instead lasted for all 8 nights? You all know that story. Or was it the victory of the small Maccabee army against the much more well-armed and well-resourced Greeks? The rabbis of the Talmud seem to really want to distance Chanukah from any association with military victory or fighting, and they focus instead entirely on oil and candle lighting to represent the miracle of light among darkness. But regardless of the rabbis' discomfort, which could be the subject of an entirely different drashah, in many ways, the miracle amounts to the same thing: an unlikely overcoming of something small and flickering and hopeful in the presence of so much destruction and violence. And both miracles reinforce why I think we need Chanukah. We need that hopefulness in our lives right now. In both these tellings, the miracle is that even in the face of so much that feels like it could consume us, the possibility of our small light or might making a difference is still possible. That whatever the setback might be, the possibility of miraculously fighting back is also there. I want to offer one other option for what the miracle of Chanukah might be, separate from both the oil and the Maccabee army. And for that, I want to dive into our Parashat this week, Miketz, which begins, Vayhi Miketz shnatayim yamim. It was at the end of 2 years' time that Pharaoh dreamed a dream. What does it mean, the end of 2 years' time? The end of 2 years' time from what? For that, we actually have to go back to the end of last week's Parsha. Last week, Joseph was interpreting the dreams of the cupbearer and the baker who were with him in prison. I'm going to give a brief refresher, but I know that Rabbi Klein spoke about it in depth last week, so I can refer you back to that. But Joseph interprets the baker's dream to mean that the baker is not going to be freed, but instead will be impaled and pecked by the birds or sentenced to death. And he interprets the cupbearer or the butler's dream to mean that he will be freed. He will be restored to his position as chief cupbearer in Pharaoh's house, freed from imprisonment. And both of Joseph's interpretations come true. Before the cupbearer was freed, Joseph asked him, "Please, remember me when things are good for you. I haven't done anything to warrant me sitting in this prison." The Parsha ends with the line, "Yet the cupbearer did not remember Joseph. He forgot him." And that is where our Parsha picks up. Vayhi Miketz shnatayim yamim. It was at the end of the 2 years of forgetting. That is when Pharaoh dreamed his dream and Joseph was finally remembered. 2 long years of Joseph sitting in his prison cell, knowing he was innocent, but not being able to do anything about it. The rabbis of the Midrashic tradition say this 2-year period was a period of darkness for Joseph, and that Miketz, which means the end, is referring to the end of that period of darkness for him. I love that the rabbis connect this period in Joseph's life to darkness, because here they don't just mean the physical darkness, like the darkness of the longest days of the year. They mean the emotional darkness of uncertainty, of desperation, of grief. Think for a minute of Joseph's emotional state as he sat in the Beit Sohar, in the jail cell, and how hopeless or helpless he must have felt. The rabbis also say that this period of forgetting Joseph was not just one of darkness, but also one of miracles. The Midrash says that in the same breath that the cupbearer forgot Joseph, God remembered him. And then it connects this remembering with a lineage of miracles going back to Abraham and Sarah. The Midrash asks, Mi mechakeh, who was waiting with Abraham and Sarah when they were old, anticipating that they would have a baby? Who was waiting with Jacob when he sent his family across the river, that he would become wealthy and expansive? Who was waiting with Ruth, who was a stranger, for her to return to the people of her mother-in-law? Who was waiting with the Jews during the days of Haman for the Jewish people to ultimately be saved? And who here is waiting with Joseph, knowing that he will be restored and brought to power even after all of these days of sorrow and difficulty? Mi mechakeh, who is waiting and anticipating with us? I think the Midrash is doing something amazing here, because it could have said, we could easily imagine it saying, who is the one who gave Abraham and Sarah a baby in their old age? Who is the one who brought Jacob to wealth and power? Who is the one who released Joseph from the house of bondage? Who saved the Jews from Haman? But it doesn't say any of these things. It instead positions God not as the one who ultimately brings these miracles to fruition, but as the one who is waiting and anticipating with us, the one who is in the challenge of darkness with us. So I think that brings us back to Chanukah. In the story of the Maccabees, I imagine this as the time. I imagine this mapping onto the time when the Greeks have taken over. The time before the victory and before the miracle, the time when all they could imagine was a life lived in hiding or secrecy. Mi mechakeh, who was waiting with them in that time? In our own world right now, I know many are feeling the challenge of looking ahead at the next 4 years and feeling helpless, feeling like there is so much stacked against us who are trying to protect the rights of our families, of those seeking refuge here in the United States, and our loved ones. Mi mechakeh, who is waiting with us? Some might be feeling this darkness in a more personal way. Perhaps you are in a waiting period of your life, hoping for something to change, longing or desiring something that you wish would come to pass. Maybe you're waiting for a baby, or for love, or for a job, or for healing, for direction, for good news. Maybe you've been in this waiting period for a long time, and it feels hard that you don't know when the end of the waiting will come, or if it will at all. Maybe your life has actually started to change a little bit, but it's still hard because you don't know the end of the story yet. Isn't the unknown always the most annoying thing? Or the hardest, I suppose. Maybe you're just at the very beginning of what you know will be a challenging period, and it feels overwhelming to imagine how you will move forward. I want to offer the idea that yes, there is a miracle in finally getting the change you are hoping for reaching the destination, for receiving the blessing that you've been praying for. But there is also the miracle present in the waiting, in that long, hard period of anticipating. There is a miracle in holding on to hope throughout the darkness. The writer Anne Lamott, who wrote Bird by Bird and many other works, got married for the first time at 65 years old. And she let her fans know that a good marriage was something she wanted but had yet to achieve. She finally met her happily ever after above the age of 60. After her wedding, she wrote, "Never give up. No matter how things look or how long they take, don't quit before the miracle. The miracle of Chanukah is, yes, that the oil lasted, and yes, that we overcame. But it is also in the Jews' ability to hope at all, to live through a time of terror and not completely give in, to experience the reign of the Greeks and still hold on to their own inner light. The beauty of the story of Joseph, who sat in wait for 2 long years, is that just like the Chanukah story, God's name does not appear. Joseph doesn't talk to God face to face like so many before him and like Moses after him. He, like many of us, sits and waits and feels alone. But yet the Midrash asks, Mi mechakeh, who sits and waits in anticipation with us? God is there the whole time. As is the case with most miracles, it doesn't happen all at once. You can't rush it. The Midrash tells us that miracles take time, and God is there, not just in the end result, but in that horrible, agonizing middle with us too. Don't quit before the miracle. Shabbat Shalom and Chag Urim Sameach.